Rejoice and be glad, for God in our life is good news. We've come to rejoice and to welcome God's blessing into our life as Val gives a message in song. A girl going into 7th grade was very mindful of and proud of the fact that she had never missed a day of school in her life, never been tardy a day in her life. But as she awoke that morning and looked at the alarm clock, she was alarmed. Her streak of attendance record was in jeopardy. She thought, oh no, I'll never make it. But then she did the math again and thought, maybe if I really, really hurry, I can make it to school and make it on time. So she jumped out of bed, leaped into her clothes, never paused to look in a mirror, put a brush through her hair, grabbed her books, and out the door she ran. And she ran as fast and as hard as she could. And as she ran, she prayed. And she prayed, Lord, please, please, Lord, don't let me be late. And she was running in good stride and then stumbled and fell and dirtied her clothes and skinned her knee. But it didn't let her stop her. She was jumped up like a jackrabbit, and she continued to run and continued to pray, only she changed her prayer a little bit. Please, Lord, don't let me be late, but please, Lord, don't shove me either. Have you ever felt that the hand of God was against you? If so, the lesson today from the book of Ruth may be just what you need. A lesson aimed at reminding us that God is involved in the everyday affairs of our life. An account that underscores the importance of being of noble character. An account that gives us a glimpse of God's unfolding plan of redemption for all of us. I'm glad to introduce to you Ruth, the 8th book of the Bible. The first 7 books of the Bible are long compared to Ruth, ranging from 21 to 50 chapters, but it only takes 4 chapters to tell Ruth's story, a story that occurs in a period of time biblical students understand as the period of the Judges, that period of time from the release from captivity, slavery of the children of Israel to the time of the inauguration of their first king, Saul, about 1,100 years before the birth of Christ. This is the lesson from the life of Ruth. The story begins in Bethlehem, a name that should ring familiar to all of you, for we all know that Bethlehem was the place of Jesus' birth. What you may not know is that Bethlehem means house of bread, and it receives its name from the fact that this was a very fertile region with big harvest, but not this year. For this year the skies were stingy with its rain, and the crops were withering and dying. And if you didn't have a good storehouse set aside ahead of time, you wouldn't have enough to survive that winter season, and people found that their cupboards were bare. In the early days of the famine, I can well imagine Naomi and Elimelech, her husband, saying to each other, no matter what happens, no matter how hungry we get, we are not going to move away from Bethlehem. We're not going to go to Moab, even though there is rain there and harvest there and work there. We're not going to go there. We would rather die here than live there. But when you get so hungry that death is staring you in the face, well, desperate people take desperate measures. And Naomi and her husband, Elimelech, and their 2 sons left the land of Judea and went to a foreign land across the border, the land of the Moabites. I can well imagine Naomi and this experience of her life feeling shoved out by God. And then when she faces the tragedy that her husband dies, though they go to extend their life in this land, the irony is they find death in this land. Her husband dies, and then sometime later, her 2 sons die. And she would feel even more pushed down by the hand of God. They went looking for bread. They found bread, but they also found brides for their 2 sons. But they also found, as mentioned, a great deal of heartache, hurt, and death. Naomi had buried her 2 sons, had buried her husband, and the rains had returned to Bethlehem. And she thought, what reason do I have to stay in this foreign land? I will return back to Bethlehem. And so she begins her journey. And her 2 daughters-in-law, Ruth and Orpah, join her on that journey. She appreciates their companionship. She welcomes their comfort. But as they travel, she realizes that this is not a good decision on their part. What is wonderful for her, Naomi, could prove to be very dreadful for them. How will they be received? Foreign women, unwed, foreign widowed women. They are not likely to be appreciated or respected. They no doubt would face criticism and strong prejudice, maybe hateful words and hurtful deeds. Unselfishly, she tries to persuade her 2 daughters-in-law to go back to their families, to stay in the land of their birth. And so I read chapter 1 and verse 8. Go back to your mother's home. May the Lord show to you the kindness that you have shown to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband. And then they kissed and said goodbye. And then they said to her, but Naomi, we will not leave you. Such a stubborn love, such depth of devotion, such strong sentiment. But Naomi knew how difficult it could be for unmarried, widowed, foreign women in her land, and that the chances of their finding husbands there were practically impossible. So she pleads with them again. Verse 11, return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. And even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and gave birth to sons, would you wait for them to grow up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters. It is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me." And they wept again, and they said goodbye. And Orpah returned to her family, but Ruth clung to Ruth and said, "I will not go back. Do not urge me to return to my people. Where you go, I will go. Your people will be my people. Your land will be my land. Your God will be my God." And when Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her no matter what, she yielded and welcomed Ruth's companionship with her. The two women traveled till they came to Naomi's home, Bethlehem. And when they arrived, the town was excited to see Naomi, and they exclaimed, "Can this be Naomi?" Naomi, a name which means pleasant one. And Naomi answers their excitement by saying to those who have gathered, "Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought this misfortune on me." Is it true? Was the Lord's hand against her? Have you ever felt that the Lord's hand was against you, shoving you, pushing you down, holding you back, bringing heartache into your life? Have you ever felt, "Where is the Lord when I need him?" in the time of my trial and temptation? Naomi had lost much. She had lost her possessions, lost her home, lost her neighborhood, lost all that she was familiar with, and then lost her husbands, and then added to that, lost both sons. But she suffered an even more serious loss, and that was the loss of her hope. For she had confessed, "Even if there was any hope left for me." What happens when a person loses hope? Why is losing hope so dangerous? Have you ever lost hope? Is it only depressed people who lose hope? How close are you to hopeless today? How do your experiences compare to Naomi's? Hopelessness occurs whenever you feel there's nothing that you can do that will make a difference. Hopelessness occurs when you believe that God is not great enough to notice you, or to care enough to watch over you, or maybe has something against you, and his hand is against you. Why is losing hope so dangerous? Because losing hope leads to helplessness. Hope energizes, and when hope is lost, energy is lost. What gasoline is to an automobile, hope is to our life. You could have a brand new car, fully equipped, all of the best equipment, with the power button on and an experienced driver at the wheel. But if that car is out of gas, it's not going anywhere. And if you are out of hope in your life, you're going nowhere, at least nowhere worth going. Hopelessness leads to helplessness. Naomi believed the hand of God was against her, but we know better. We have the promise, Romans 8:31 and 32. If God be for us, who can be against us? If God did not spare his own son, but freely gave him up for us, is not our future secure? Things may not go as we desire, but we can believe through all of our trials and testings that God is at work and we are to trust him. Take hope, my child. Sorrow may come for the night, but joy comes in the morning. Will a new day dawn for Naomi? Will she realize that God is for her and not against her? They just happened to arrive, Naomi and Ruth, when the barley harvest is just beginning. And after a short period of time, Ruth asked Naomi, "May I go into the fields and seek to find some of the harvest and take it for ourselves?" But Naomi is very reluctant to say yes, as she knows the dangers that unmarried, foreign widow would face in the harvest field. She knew how desperately she wanted to protect her, and I suspect was overprotective of her. But she also realized she was in the same place she and her husband and 2 sons were when the skies were stingy with rain and a famine gripped the land. You have to eat in order to survive. And though she was worried about Ruth and what could happen to Ruth, she said, yes, go to the harvest. And she just hoped and prayed that she would go and find a field where the owner of the field would welcome a foreigner, would welcome a foreign woman. Well, she goes to a field known by a man named Boaz. And when he came to see how the harvest was going in his field, he saw a stranger who was a woman. And he said to the harvesters, who is that woman? And their answer is this: she is a Moabite who came back from Moab with Naomi. Emphasis on the fact that she is a foreigner and she is not one of us. So Boaz approaches Ruth and says, don't pick in any other field. Stay right here. Don't go away from here. Applying other fields may be dangerous, but you are safe here. He goes on to say to Ruth, I have told my men that they are not to lay a hand on you, and whenever you get thirsty, go and get a drink from their water jars which they have filled. And at this, Ruth bowed to the ground with her face upon the earth and lifted her eyes and said, Sir, why have I found favor in your eyes, I who am a foreigner? Boaz replied, because I have been told of your kindness, of your love, and your loyalty to Naomi. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. And Ruth would find reward, and she would find refuge, and it would be from God, but through human agency. And that agent would be Boaz and his kindness towards home. When she arrives home, Naomi breathes a great sigh of relief. She is so happy to see the big smile on Ruth's face, and she can see that she hasn't been harmed in any way. She's overjoyed when she realizes in her bundle how much barley that she has brought, grain that they can grind that will keep them for the days that are to come. She said to Naomi, in whose field did you work? And Naomi answered, in the field of a man by the name of Boaz. Boaz, she said, you were in the field of Boaz? Why, Boaz is a kinfolk of my former husband. He is our God-appointed guardian, or in the language of the King James Version, our kinsman redeemer. Naomi thought, dare I mention this to Boaz through Ruth? Should I bring it up? She decides to be silent for the time, but not for long. And she launches a very bold plan. She says, Ruth, I want you to wash. I want you to put on perfume. I want you to take off that black robe of a widow woman in grief and wear this brightly colored robe, a robe that would say, I'm available. I want you to go to the barley field, for now they are winnowing the harvest. And Boaz is there winnowing the harvest. And I want you to watch without being noticed. Watch while he eats and drinks, and watch where he lies down. And she goes and she does exactly what Ruth says. She watches Boaz as he eats and drinks and how he grows higher and higher in spirit. And she watches where he lays down. And she does exactly what Naomi has told her to do. She goes after it looks like he has fallen asleep, and she lifts the corner of his blanket and she lies at his feet. He is startled in the night to awaken and find somebody right there and sharing underneath his blanket. And he says, who is it? And she says, it is your servant Ruth. And Ruth said to him, please spread the corner of your garment over me, for you are the kinsman redeemer of our family. And Boaz said, the Lord bless you, my daughter. This kindness is greater than the kindness that was showed earlier. You have not run after younger men, rich or poor. And now, my daughter, do not be afraid. I will do for you what you ask. For all of the people of the town know that you are a woman of noble character. And although it is true that I am kinfolk to your family and rightful guardian, there is another who is even of closer kin, and he must have the first opportunity. I will go immediately in the morning and seek him out and see if he would like to be your redeemer. If not, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. It was the ancient law of Moses by which they were to live. And that law in principle emphasized this: family is to take care of family. Widows are being cared for. Orphans are to be cared for. There was a law in the lines of Moses that if a man died and left a widow without sons, and if he had a brother, and even if that brother was married, he was to take that widowed woman as his wife as well, his kinsman responsibility, in the hope that he would be able to give her a son, or better yet, even sons. Family was to take care of family. God our Father has given us Christ our brother in that he has shared our humanity, and our brother has become our Redeemer. And the price of our redemption to set us free from our past was the shedding of his own blood. And so we are brought into the family, and we are to be joined to Christ. We are the bride. We are the body of Christ, and he is the one who is to care for us. In the last chapter of the story of Ruth, so Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And then the Lord enabled her to conceive and to have a son. And the woman said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a kinsman redeemer. For your daughter-in-law who loves you and who is better for you than 7 sons." Naomi has a son, a grandson. And they named him Obed. And they named his son Jesse. And Jesse then became the father of David. And David is a name you likely recognize. David, King David, the greatest of Israel's king, until Jesus, his successor, would come. David was from Bethlehem. Jesus was from Bethlehem. And that's why you find Boaz and Ruth's name on the very first page of the New Testament. I hope you don't miss the lessons of the writings of Ruth. The lesson that Boaz's kindness and Ruth's kindness were rewarded with the kindness of God. And our kindness, too, will find its reward. And though Naomi and Ruth both lost everything, both lost their husbands, Naomi lost her husbands and her sons, both lost their homeland, the place of their birth, but both of them found a rich treasure in their love and loyalty to one another, which opened the door to greater blessings from God. And I hope you don't miss the point that even when circumstances seem to conspire against us, God is always for us, never against us. And I hope you realize that God works through human agency. It was through the kindness of Boaz that Ruth found her reward and her shelter. And in a society marked by strife and division, fear and animosity, despair and hopelessness, God is seeking to channel his good news, his kindness, his help through you. If you reach out your hand to support a neighbor, this is the hand of God. Your faithfulness to your spouse is the faithfulness of God. Your fairness to your employee, if you're an employer, is the justice of God. Your offering refuge to one in need is the refuge of God. Have you ever realized that for a world in need, you are called to be the hand of God, the voice of God, to convince others that God's hand is not against them, but for them? The most important line is not our bloodline, but our faith line. For in this we find our connection to God in Christ, by which we become joined. last two questions. What would Boaz have been without Ruth? Well, he would have been ruthless. The more important question, what would you be without Christ? Nothing. For our lives have no lasting value apart from our connection to Christ. This is what gives our life true value, lasting value, even eternal value. The good news, you need not spend another moment without Christ. There is never a better time than now to say yes to Jesus. This will change your life. This will put you in a position to receive God's richest blessings for you. Listen to this prayer. Make this prayer that Val sings your prayer this day in the conclusion of our worship.